Hello and welcome to our first percussion lesson video. I wanted to quickly introduce myself before diving into the lesson. My name is Mr. Chaparro and I'm currently the assistant band director at Socorro Middle School, and I also teach at Campestre Elementary School. I've been teaching percussion for about 10 years now, ranging from all levels: elementary, middle school, high school, college, even at the drum corps level and winter guard level. You might have seen me around as one of the middle school all-region percussion organizers in the years past, and I'm also actively judging for middle school all-region percussion. I want to thank you again for joining me. Let's get started. For today's lesson, we're going to be reviewing 3 important concepts that can be applied to all percussion instruments. First, we'll talk about our fulcrum. Next, we'll talk about our grip. And we'll also talk about 2 different stroke types today. And at the end of the lesson, I have a little exercise for us to apply all 3 things that we talk about. So first off, let's talk about fulcrum. Fulcrum is the point where our fingers are making contact, wrapping around, and our stick is moving. There's 3 different types of fulcrums that I want to discuss today. The first one is the front fulcrum, and this one is the one you're most familiar with. So we put our thumb print on the stick, and we wrap our first finger around. Most of y'all should be familiar with this fulcrum point. Your other fingers, we just gently wrap it around the stick. We're not squeezing the stick, but they're just wrapped around. The main point where there's any kind of pressure is right here with our thumb and our first finger. Our other fingers are gently wrapped around. So this one's going to be called our front fulcrum because it's using our front fingers up here. Now the next question that people always ask me is, Mr. C, where do I wrap my sticks around? My fingers around the stick? Is it in the middle, the back? So the best way to do it is with your drumstick. If you hold it in the far back and you drop it, it's not going to bounce very well. We want to find the point on the stick where we're going to get the most bounces. If we do it too far in the middle, same thing. If I scoot back just a little bit, so I start getting more bounces that way. So you want to find that sweet spot where the stick can naturally bounce a few times. Generally, if you wrap your fingers around, there should be just a little bit at the end of the stick, and that's usually your fulcrum point. So that's our front fulcrum. Most of you guys are familiar with this one, and you were probably taught this in years past. The second one I want to talk about is our middle fulcrum. So middle fulcrum is when our middle finger is wrapped around the stick, our thumb is on the stick, and notice it's thumbprint, not the side of the thumb, but your actual thumbprint. That's on the stick. And your first finger is just nice and relaxed. Remember, for the front fulcrum, your first finger is wrapped around with your thumb. But for our middle fulcrum, we have our middle finger there, and our thumb is on. And this is where the stick is going to be moving. And this is kind of what it looks like. You might see this fulcrum on drum set players. So sometimes on drum set, when they're playing on the hi-hat, you might see that first finger just kind of dangling. It's not that they don't have a fulcrum. What it is their fulcrum is actually right here with their middle finger. So if you ever see that, that's what that one is. That's our middle fulcrum. The next fulcrum I want to talk about is our back fulcrum. And that one, we wrap our back fingers around, and that's where we use these back fingers and our arm to help with our motion, with our pivot point. So the first pivot point for front fulcrum was our thumb and first finger. Our middle finger fulcrum, or our middle fulcrum, is right here in the middle. And that's the one where our first finger might be dangling. And then we have our back finger fulcrum. For the back finger fulcrum, you might be using this one for bass drum. For example, this bass drum mallet is very big, and if we just use our front finger fulcrum for it, you can get very tired playing the bass drum. You might be using unnecessary muscles, and you might be getting really tired out. That's why I like to use back finger fulcrum whenever I play bass drum, because I have more control of the mallet when I'm striking the instrument. Now obviously, you all don't have a bass drum at home, a concert bass drum, but I did want to share with you guys these 3 different fulcrum points, in case you ever see other percussionists using them, and you could quickly identify real quick. Those of you who are looking at drumline videos, Drumline videos, they use all 3 fulcrum points all the time as well. In your classroom though, the most important one you need to really focus on mastering is that front finger fulcrum, and you'll be using that one the most. Same thing with mallets. For our mallets, we have our thumb on the mallet. We wrap our first finger around, and that's our front fulcrum. So we just finished going over 3 fulcrum points: our front, our mid, and our back fulcrum. For the rest of the video, we're going to be referring to our front fulcrum. So next, let's talk about our different grips that we have. We have our French grip. This one is mostly known with their thumb pointing up to the sky. We have our German grip. This one is known for having very flat wrists when you play. And we have our American grip. American's the in-between. It's not up completely, it's not completely flat, but it's a 45-degree angle in between. First, let's start off with our French grip. With our French grip, we're going to have our front fulcrum up top, and this one is used a lot on drum set. If you ever see jazz drum set players on the ride cymbal, you might notice them playing like this. And what's good about our French grip is we have access to our fast fingers. So you could play very quickly using your smaller muscles, and that French grip allows that. You also see a French grip used on timpani. And when they play their timpani, they bring out the sound. So it's a very relaxed, fluid type of grip. Our second grip I want to talk about is our German grip. And the German grip was designed for drums that are very close to the body. So right now I'm stepping all the way up to the snare drum. And if you notice, we can't really play with our French grip this way. I mean, we can, but it's just really uncomfortable. My elbows are all the way back, and it just doesn't feel right. So that's why they turned their wrist in, and they made their hands completely flat. That way, it's so much easier to play. Sometimes I use this grip whenever I'm sitting down and I'm in an uncomfortable position, and the pad or instrument is really close to me. I need to change my grip to this way. The third one I want to talk about, which is the one you're probably using in your classroom, is called the American grip. And that's our in-between. It's not French grip all the way straight up to the sky. And it's not German grip with their hands completely flat. It's a little bit in between, very relaxed. The best way I like to approach that grip, I always put my arms to the side, nice and relaxed. Close my eyes, and then I just bring up my hands naturally. And this should be the most natural position. So we're at a 45-degree angle. We're not completely flat. We're not completely up to the sky. We're just nice and relaxed, right in between. And that one is our American grip. So we've talked about fulcrum. We've talked about grip. Now let's talk about 2 different stroke types. So first, make sure we have our front fulcrum. So make sure your thumbprint is on the stick, your first finger wrapped around, and these back fingers are cradling the stick. Remember, you're not squeezing, but you're just nice and relaxed with these back fingers. If there's any pressure, it's all right here in our fulcrum point to make sure the stick doesn't fly out. We talked about our grip. We're going to be focusing on our American grip for this situation. This should feel the most relaxed and the most comfortable. Remember, we want percussion playing to feel very relaxed and never tense. So let me demonstrate the 2 different stroke types we're going to talk about. We're going to have our downstrokes. And we're going to have our legato strokes. So right away, you can see the difference. They might sound the same, but they look very different. First, let's talk about our legato stroke. This legato stroke has many different names, but they all look the same. It's whenever you strike the instrument and the stick or mallet bounces back up. I know Mr. Hunt at Pebble Hills High School likes to call them a bounce stroke because you're literally bouncing the stick and it comes right back up. People also refer to it as legato stroke, and just like with our wind instruments, legato means smooth and connected. Staccato means very short and abrupt, lots of space in between. But our legato stroke is just one nice connected motion. So for a legato stroke, I want you to practice right now striking your instrument, your pad, and making sure that you have your good fulcrum point, and you're throwing the stick down with enough velocity, enough speed that it bounces back up. Go ahead and try that with me. So I like to think of this legato stroke as bouncing a basketball. With the basketball, you put all your energy down, and the energy travels through the basketball, and then it comes back up. It would be really hard to dribble the basketball if you're doing this motion all the time. What you do is you just throw the ball down, and then it comes right back up. It's the same idea with our stick. You do not want to have two motions with these legato strokes. You should not be going down, up, down, up. It should just be one motion. Down, down, down. So you're throwing all your energy down. Right now, I want you to go ahead and practice doing this quick little exercise. You're going to do 4 legato strokes with your right hand, and then 4 legato strokes with your left hand. Just like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead and try that right now. So you just finished doing 4 legato strokes on each hand. Remember, whenever you're doing these legato strokes, every time you hit the instrument, you should always get the same sound. If it sounds like this, those are 2 different sounds. So what we're always going for is, regardless what hand you're doing it on, you always want the same sound. So if the music is telling you to do legato strokes, you want to make sure whenever you're striking, regardless of what hand you're hitting it with, you're getting that nice, long legato stroke sound. And make sure you're not doing 2 motions. Make sure it's not down, up, but just one motion. If it's not bouncing for you, that means you might be going too slow. For example, it might look like this. The next stroke I want to talk about is our downstroke. Our downstroke should feel like our legato stroke, but it ends differently. And our downstroke should also kind of sound like our legato stroke also. This is our downstroke. So to me, I'm starting it the same way as our legato stroke. We have that downward motion, and I'm throwing it with velocity and speed. But instead of letting it bounce back up, I'm letting the weight of my hand keep that stick down. If I was to relax a little bit and let the stick bounce up, then we would have our legato stroke. So right there, I went between our downstrokes and our legato stroke. It's important to not squeeze the stick in order to stop it for our downstrokes. You don't want to do this, because you're going to make the sound louder and you're going to be playing with tension, and we never want to play with that kind of tension. So we're always relaxed. We always have that good fulcrum point, regardless if it's a legato stroke or a downstroke. So right now, I want you to practice doing 4 downstrokes on each hand, kind of like we did with our legato strokes. So you're going to do this. 1, 2,